We all have something to share. No share with Dr. Dave.
Well, hello and welcome to the Now Share with Dr. Dave podcast. Just looking forward to a great day today. I am Dr. Dave A. Cornelius, affectionately called Dr. Dave, and I am your host today. We're going to get into having a conversation about generative leadership, and to start that off, I wanted to bring back up the generative adaptive practices tree, and kind of like just give us an idea of some of the items that, well, when we think about generative adaptive practices, there are really eight tenets that we lean into in our conversation. And so the first one we talk about under this tree and the roots is like an abundance mindset. And so when we think about generative adaptive practices leaders, what they're working on is developing their organization, learning and growing culture, right? And they believe that everyone has the potential to grow and succeed, right? This is a very human-centric model. We're always looking to see how can we deliver value to the organization. The second is, like we said, focus on what's willing and enabled, willing people who are willing to get into the work and help build and bring things forward. And as leaders, we find opportunities to enable them by giving them the appropriate skills. So they create strategies for building resilient teams and promoting collaboration. And this is like an environment created that allows everyone to feel valued and empowered, which is really a powerful space to be in. Then the third thing is that we trust you to achieve our goals. So GAP leaders build trust with their teams, with their partners, with their peers, and they encourage these individuals to take ownership of their work. People is like really centered, and so this is very human-centric. The fourth, we talk about win and lose as a team. So GAP leaders develop a mindset that embraces successes and failures and learns from them. And they treat failure as an opportunity to find new ways to learn and grow. And so 5 is partner and have conversations to learn more. GAP leaders develop strategies for fostering dialogue and learning from their teams, learning from their peers, learning from their partners, learning from their customers. And they believe that everyone has something to bring to the table, something to teach, something to provide, some new information. And the best way to learn is by sharing ideas and experiences. And so now we're on to the 6th tenet, which is run the experiment and evaluate the hypothesis. Now, I love running the experiments because there's always a great opportunity for us to learn. And oftentimes we're like so positive about everything, and we forget to realize that, hey, these things are just hypotheses that we have out there. So GAP leaders, they use adaptive practices to harness new ideas with an open mind and assess their potential. They're not afraid to experiment and take risks. And then we look at number 7. What did we learn from failure to grow? They treat failure as an opportunity for learning. So they said failure is an opportunity to learn and grow. And they believe in creating a culture where people feel safe admitting their mistakes. And in the coaching space, there's this whole conversation about psychological safety. And so this is where this applies. What did we learn from failure to grow? And the final, number 8 is fun and joy. My favorite one of all. Fun and joy, and then come abundance mindset. So fun and joy, GAP leaders are always trying to enhance productivity by shaping like this positive organizational culture that enables individuals and teams to thrive in a VUCA environment, well, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment. They believe people are more productive and engaged when having fun, and enjoying their work. So today, I have the great opportunity of bringing on Ms. Bryn Jones from Gathering Elan, and if I said that incorrectly, she's going to correct me really quickly. And so I just wanted to let you know that. So I'll just add her onto the stage. Welcome, Bryn Jones. What's going on?
Thank you, Dr. Dave. It's great to be here. And it is Elan, Gathering Elan. Yes.
Okay. Good. See, I figured it would help me out here. We're going to help each other learn today.
That's what we're going to do. Yep.
That's what we're going to do. So I love to start off my podcast now lately asking you, is there a song or spoken word that's inspiring you today? And I would like to see if I could, encourage people to like maybe hum a few bars if they want to, or they could recite a few words, of their inspiration. So what have you for us today, Bryn?
Well, Dr. Dave, I've listened to the podcast enough times to know this was coming. And trust me, you do not want me to sing or hum. So I'm going to read part of a poem that speaks to me a lot. And it's called For Calling the Spirit Back from Wandering the Earth in Its Human Feet. And it's by Joy Harjo. This is just a part of it. Call your spirit back. It may be caught in corners and creases of shame, judgment, and human abuse. You must call it in a way that your spirit will want to return. Speak to it as you would to a beloved child. Welcome your spirit back from its wandering. It may return in pieces and tatters. Gather them together. They will be happy to be found after being lost for so long. Your spirit will need to sleep a while after it is bathed and given clean clothes. Now you can have a party. Invite everyone you know who loves and supports you. Keep room for those who have no place else to go. Make a giveaway and remember, keep the speeches short. Then you must do this. Help the next person find their way through the dark.
Now, if that is not a profound statements for a generative leader.
Yeah. To me, it's really about coming back to ourselves so that we can be whole again. And then doing you were talking about fun and joy, bringing some of that into it so that we can help others through their own journeys.
It's important. But let's learn a little bit about you. I like people to introduce themselves. So I was give an elevator pitch about Bryn Jones and Gathering Elan.
I got to say, the older I get, the more I struggle with this kind of question. This 30 seconds, cover all that in 30 seconds. So I will do my best, and I will focus it for this conversation, because I've had a lot of different paths and experiences bringing me to where I am now. So for the purposes of our conversation, I'll say I'm an executive and leadership coach working with leaders and change agents, because not everyone wants to embrace that term leader, and I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Yep.
But these are people who want to lead from a place of center and with deep care. So at the heart of this, I create spaces where people get to connect to themselves and others authentically. We talk a lot about showing up authentically, but honestly, most of us don't know how to do it. We have to connect to ourselves before we can show up in an authentic way. So I provide spaces through individual coaching, peer coaching, through a program called the Community Leadership Accelerator, and also engagements in organizations where people get to actually show up as real human beings. No judgment, protected spaces. They get to explore themselves so that then they can show up in ways that are real for others. So my business is Gathering Elan, as we've already established. And the poem, the part of the poem that I read in the beginning, speaks to some of what Gathering Elan is about. In order to be whole human beings showing up authentically, we have to gather ourselves up. And we do that on our own. We do that with support. We lean on others to help us gather up our resources, whether internally or externally. So gathering Elan is really about creating those spaces. And Elan means passion, vitality, spirit. It also happens to be my middle name.
I was wondering when that was going to come in.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about my work and my business, and I cannot talk about myself without saying I'm also a single mom of 2 boys. One who has a birthday tomorrow and will be 14, starting high school next year.
Woo.
My youngest is 11, going into middle school next year. And they really give me all sorts of motivation to walk my talk and really try to make change in the world. So.
Yeah, boy energy, huh?
Oh, it's so much. Been feeling that one lately. It's summertime. They've been home a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, but I mean, that's such a great thing. Love the story. So talk to me about the whole motivation to coach nonprofit leaders, and how do you see generative leadership contributing to a more thriving, like, social sector? I know I'm stacking questions. Coaches, we're supposed to ask one at a time. I know, but
it's okay. I'll answer them one at a time. How about that?
Yes, you will.
All right. So what motivates me to coach nonprofit leaders? Well, first I'll say I don't solely coach nonprofit leaders, but that has certainly been a focus of my work. And in some ways, it's just very natural because I was one. Before starting my business 13 years ago, I was a nonprofit executive director. For those who are not so familiar with the nonprofit world, that's the equivalent of a CEO. And I had worked for many years in Tucson in the nonprofit sector. So when I decided to start a coaching and consulting business, it was a very natural community for me to go to. Beyond that, I'm really motivated to coach leaders who see possibility for change in the world, and where I see possibility in those leaders. So the nonprofit sector, obviously, very mission-driven organizations, very mission and values-driven leaders, very natural place, again, to find people that are working towards visions that align with my own visions of, humans being better humans to each other and the planet on which we rely. So I am also, the nonprofit sector is a really interesting one to me in many ways. And leadership in the nonprofit sector is really interesting because I work a lot with nonprofit EDs and CEOs who find themselves in those positions after many years of doing program work. They got into the work because they're really impassioned by the mission. They started off, at lower rungs of the organization doing the program work, working directly with clients or doing advocacy work or organizing or however the work took shape for them. And just kind of moved up in the organization. That's how it happened for me. Like, I honestly didn't intentionally become a nonprofit executive director. I went through the steps to apply for the job and took it and all of that. So there was obviously some intention there, but I regularly gave some thought to how I wanted to lead, but I didn't really deeply think about what does it mean to be a leader and what does it mean to be a leader working for the kind of change that we're looking for. How does that show up on a daily basis in me? How do I bring those sort of ideals into how I operate on a daily basis? And I see nonprofit leaders and change agents. So this is where I'll go back to the change agents. A lot of the people that I work with very intentionally resist the label leader because they associate it with abuses of power. And I'm sure we'll get into that more, but they don't want to call themselves a leader. They'll step into the work, they'll step up, but leader to them has very negative connotations. So in my own leadership journey, as I looked around for support and resources to really step into how I wanted to be the change I wanted to see in the world, that it might be a trite expression, but it's also really true. There weren't a lot of resources. And then as I got more into my business over the years and looking around more and more, there's a lot of resources for people to enhance their technical skills and learn how to manage nonprofits, how to be an administrator. There are not many resources out there about how you can really step into what is this kind of leadership to begin with? Like, what does it mean to lead towards the kind of change that you're trying to make in the world? And how can you do that? So yeah, I particularly like working with folks that are wanting to make change. And there's a lot of that in the nonprofit sector. So there we go.
Yeah, but let's talk about, like, if a leader in the nonprofit sector with an abundance mindset, how do they bring about, shifts and changes in that organization inside? Also, you have people who are going to be donating, time and resources and also the people who are going to be receiving value, and also the community as a whole. So I know I'm like bringing all these people into the conversation, but if you have an abundance mindset, how does that really allow that organization to thrive?
Well, to be honest, Dave, I think having an abundance mindset in the nonprofit sector is really hard. It's organizations are scrappy. There was just recently on LinkedIn, Simon Sinek posted something, I don't know, in the last month or so, about how nonprofit organizations needed to be doing more with less. And that is such an old but continued idea of what nonprofit should be. All the money should be going into programs and nothing should be going into the infrastructure and administration to support and build those programs. And so these are the waters that nonprofit leaders swim in, of scarcity. Yeah. And so it takes tremendous practice, intention and practice to cultivate abundance, to be able to see things like constraints as opportunities, and to have the courage, like many people did in response to Simon Sinek's post, to say, no, we nonprofits need abundance too, to be able to make the changes and serve the people that we're trying to do.
Yeah, maybe we'll spend some time with Simon Sinek, and I really love this first book, Start With Why.
Sure.
But we need to help him along to get an abundance mindset when it comes to nonprofits.
Yeah. There are a lot of people helping him out on LinkedIn.
Okay, good. Get the help he needs, right?
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, going back to your question about how do you see generative leadership contributing to a more thriving social sector? So I don't know if people normally do this for you, but I wanted to read a few lines from your book to you, if that's okay.
Okay, blow me away.
So it's in your chapter, What is Generative Leadership? Generative leadership is a style of leadership that focuses on creating and growing people to have a new or changed experience. Generative leaders can see the potential in people and situations, and they can create a vision for the future that is both inspiring and achievable. They can also build resilient teams and cultures that are conducive to innovation and growth. It is a powerful leadership practice that stands in contrast to traditional hierarchical leadership styles. While conventional leaders often rely on top-down decision-making, generative leaders value input and diverse perspectives from their team members. They understand that the best ideas can come from anywhere within the organization. And as you were, saying just a few moments ago, for nonprofits, and for-profits too.
Yeah.
Those diverse perspectives come from outside the organization as well. So I think nonprofit leaders are uniquely positioned to surface ideas from the margins and from the many perspectives and communities that can help us think of different ways to do things. They are learning. Some are very good at partnering. Others there's still a big learning curve there. But really partnering with other organizations with similar missions. They see potential. I mean, they have to see potential for them to keep going. I'm thinking of I just read a statement today from a woman who heads up an organization along the border in response to, there were some, President Biden announced some new border closures, and she was writing a statement in response to that with anger, frustration, confusion over what to. Her organization works directly with migrants waiting at the border to file for asylum. And she went straight into, as she was explaining how hard it was for her to even think about how to deal with the moment. She went straight to the people her organization serves, and she shared the stories of the people in that room, and one story in particular of the hard circumstances they were facing. And she shared how she sat with them and she held the uncertainty with them. And then she closed her statement with this beautiful sharing of how those who were facing these dire circumstances were still giving to others. They were still providing for others. They were seeing that they had more than others around them, and so they were sharing and giving out of love. And she said, this is what gives her hope for our future. Like, she gets to see this sort of love and potential and resilience every day. And I mean, wow, what a gift that is for us, to be able to sit with the anger, frustration, sadness, tragedy, all of that, and still find joy and hope and love. It's a gift.
It is a gift, without a doubt. I'm going to do something here. Bill Maher, sometimes I'll watch a show and here he is promoting his book. So I never promote mine as much. So get Generative Leadership to Thrive on Amazon.com. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Bryn.
Sure thing.
So, look, let's talk about some of the complex challenges that nonprofits, they run into, and maybe you could share some common themes that you see emerging through your work with some of the executive directors, and how these challenges really impact their leadership style.
Yeah. Well, we already touched on the scarcity mindset and the realities around that. Not just people's expectations that organizations should run on nothing, but the funding realities of that too. There's nonprofit organizations, typically. There are exceptions, but typically they're doing a lot with a little, and so that always causes stressors. I hear a lot, when are we going to get to that point where we don't have to worry about funding anymore? Where are we going to get to that point where we have enough capacity to actually do the programs that we're doing? Where do we get to the point where we get to take bigger steps towards the vision that we've seen and that we want to see? And, right now, I'm seeing a lot, and I think this is true across organizations from the reading and listening I'm doing to. I think this is just true in our country right now, that there is a lot of turnover in organizations. And particularly for smaller nonprofits, that turnover causes great stress, because that means the ED the CEO, the senior leaders are getting more into the weeds of all the daily stuff than they should be. They don't have the capacity to keep going the way they were going if they have lots of turnover. And so it means that their leadership, they might have certain ways they want to show up as leaders. And then there's the reality of they are overwhelmed, they're under-resourced, they don't have the energy and focus and resources to really grow that potential in the organization, in the community, in their teams, in themselves. And they're spending less time looking at the bigger picture, which is what we really need them doing, right? So, yeah, that's definitely some of the challenge that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's huge. Where the ED and start to have more work than they really wanted to ever sign up for, unless they were a founder, and then that's just a natural thing, right?
Well, you do, but you're touching on something else too that was going through my mind, which is nonprofit leaders have huge heart. They want to be able to change so much.
Yes.
And so they also, I see boundary setting as both individual boundary setting and collective boundary setting as a real place of opportunity for nonprofit leaders to grow, because they say yes so much. And they want to say yes because funders want them to do more, and they have to prove more to funders, and they want to help more. And so they keep saying yes, and then they're stretched too thin. And again, then they're in a place of, under-resourced and overcapacity. And so, yeah.
Yes, I know what that feels like. I've been there.
Yeah.
And you too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not a place, when you're in that place, it is not a great place to be making decisions from. It's not a great place to be connecting, building relationships with your team, other partners, community. It's a hard place. It's a hard place.
Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah.
So, one of the great things about generative leadership, right, and the whole leadership is their focus and the way they encourage experimentation and learning from failures, and it's a thing that, as I am having conversation with leaders and their team members, is that this is one of the things that I try to emphasize. So, share some example of where you run into some of these nonprofit leaders that you have coached and you help them to embrace this approach, and then tell us what was the outcome.
It's as I think about this question, I'm not thinking of a particular instance, but I'm thinking of a particular leader that I coach. And she works for an organization that they kind of consider themselves a learning lab for work-life integration.
Mm-hmm.
So, shifting how we understand work, leadership, and family so that we can lead more integrated lives. And they're a small organization. They do a lot as a small organization. And we've worked together for years now. And I've been privileged to see her grow through our relationship. She wants to get things right, a little bit of maybe perfectionism in there. And that's a hard one. But the longer we've worked together and sort of reflected a lot on changes she's trying to make, changes that are coming at her that she's not wanting to make, things that are going right, things that are going wrong. What really stands out to me about her is her ability to, particularly if it's something unexpected, to be with the, that's not what we wanted, and be in that mess for a little while before she can shift into, okay, that didn't go the way we wanted. Let's learn from it. Let's ask questions. Let's have some conversation. Let's get some different perspective. And then let's try again with all of that, that information we've got. Let's try it again in a different way. So let's learn She's very good at saying, okay, even if I don't want it, this is an opportunity to learn and grow. And that's a norm. It's not a, one and done sort of thing. That's how she has become as a daily operating leader. That's her orientation.
Yeah, it's one of those habits you have to work on.
Yeah, well, it's mindset. It is, and you talk about this.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really embracing a growth mindset and seeing failure not as the end of something, but as a step along the way to learning how to do it differently, how to do it better. Yeah, but it's a mindset that takes practice and cultivating, for sure.
Well, yeah, without a doubt. One of the things that I try to emphasize is innovation, and innovation is like such an important aspect for long-term success. So, what techniques, frameworks can nonprofit leaders use to spark innovation within their teams?
Well, before I get to any techniques or frameworks, I would say skills, inquiry. Anyone who knows me knows that inquiry and curiosity are two words that come out of my mouth very quickly. And the third one is practice. I just used it a moment ago. Those three, and those are skills. I mean, those are certainly skills. Most of us are not taught to really be curious. Most of us are not taught how to ask questions, especially questions that open things up. And practice, well, that's hard. So I think those are three really important skills. Now, techniques or frameworks, I use a few in my work. Peer coaching, action learning are similar frameworks that are really based on, framing an issue and then asking lots and lots and lots of questions to understand the issue and bring in lots of different perspectives to open up different ways of seeing the issue before we get to ideas of how to solve it. I mean, when you put EDs and CEOs in particular in a room who are used to solving and fixing, it's so easy to jump to, oh, that's the problem, that's the issue, that's the thing that we want to do. Well, I know how to fix that. But the inquiry really slows the process down enough to say, oh, do we really know? Do we really understand what's going on here? And whether it's peer coaching, which is, a group of peers working on solving a member's issue, or action learning where it's being done in teams and they're solving issues together, the first step is really spending time in that space of inquiry so that everyone is clear on what it is that you're dealing with in the first place. There are some protocols I've used. They actually come out of the education realm. School Reform Initiative, I think, is the organization that these protocols are. They're professional development protocols, and they're freely available on the internet. But there's one in particular I really love, and I've used it with a couple of organizations over and over, and it's called Peeling the Onion. Yeah. And it's the same thing. It's surfacing learning through questions first. And I love this one, particularly people who aren't used to asking questions. In the beginning, I'll be like, are we really going to get to anything here if we're just asking questions? And by the end of it, after rounds and rounds of different types of questions, people are like, oh, wow, I had never thought of it that way. Oh, that sheds just the questions have shed all sorts of new light on something. So that's one of my favorites. And then adaptive planning. That is one I'm a huge believer in, having the long view, having the long vision, doing the work to understand organizational identity, and then having a regular rhythm of planning, acting, reflecting, planning, acting, reflecting.
those are all healthy habits to really take on, right? In terms of being able to understand the problem and really come up with new ideas. You know, I love the design thinking context of inquiry with empathy, and you're doing a lot of the same things, just calling them by different names. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
So in terms of like nonprofits wanting to bring about systemic change, right? I mean, whatever that change may be, how can generative leadership empower leaders to think beyond their organization and really start to build a strong collaborative network to achieve broader societal impact? Because normally we get in a little bubble and we don't want to partner with anyone else. So really hard.
This is a huge question. You got another, I don't know, couple days to talk about this on?
We give you 5 minutes.
Well, so this one is, there's so many ways I could go in answering this question. I think that a place to start in thinking about this question is, you said lots of organizations are hesitant to step beyond their own boundaries. I mean, mission creep is a very well-known phrase in the nonprofit sector. It's really important for nonprofit status and maintaining that. It's important for funders, for grants, all of those things. For the real systemic change and building strong collaborative networks, it really does take stepping beyond that mission and beginning to, look at things like strategic planning from a community lens rather than just an organizational lens. It takes being very deliberate about who's in the room and how power sits in the room. I think that when we talk about systemic change in particular, we have to have more conversation about power and power dynamics. I've seen a lot of collaborative processes over the years that the conveners come in as experts and they present lots, they talk a lot, they maybe share some scenarios, some options, maybe some alternatives, maybe ask for input, and then say, good, we had a collaborative process. We can check that box.
Check.
Yeah. But from my perspective, strong collaboration really begins with, again, like embodying that sort of change, which means you come in with humility, curiosity, and vulnerability. And that's hard for a lot of leaders who have been conditioned to think that the leader is the expert in the room, the leader is the hero in the room. And now I'm supposed to walk in and say, I don't know. And that's a good place to start. I think there's a lot of potential to do that. I'm trying to remember your question, thinking beyond their organizations. So there's a lot of conversation in the nonprofit sector right now, and there has been for years. I think it has been heating up more and more. Organizations and funders struggling with the difference between charitable work and systemic change, and charitable work being more I see you in need and I'm going to come in and fill that need for you. I'm going to fix that for you. Versus I see lots of needs. I see lots of strengths too. Like, I think being able to see strengths is a huge part of strong collaborative work, but we're going to get to the root cause of what's going on here. We're going to look at real change. We're going to look at upsetting the status quo. And we're going to have to do that together. I think for strong collaboration, having that more community-centric root cause approach is more authentic to systemic change work than the charity mindset.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, without a doubt. So oftentimes when we're looking at the future for nonprofits, right, there's lots of uncertainty, and especially after COVID, right? It's even worse after COVID. So
Yeah.
uh, think of the type of skills. What type of skills and mindsets are really important for nonprofit leaders to, really cultivate and navigate an ever-changing landscape?
Yeah. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot. I'm a little obsessed right now with the rate of change we're experiencing and the uncertainty that goes with that. I recently listened to a great podcast. Amy Webb, who's a strategic foresight thinker, she and Brene Brown were talking about just the technology change that we're
Mm,
in right now, like we've never seen before.
no, yeah,
Um, and I think that, you know, as I sit in groups of leaders and I sit with clients, individual clients in organizations, I I feel, I don't know that everyone's aware of how this change is affecting them and this uncertainty that they're sitting in, but I feel it. I can sense it on a regular basis, which is part of the reason why I've become so obsessed with learning more about the level of change we're working through right now. Um, but it is causing a lot of anxiety and overwhelm. And so I think the key skills and mindsets are in the realm of emotional intelligence and mindfulness.
yeah,
It's really being able to slow down enough to be aware of what's going on inside of you and the people that you're working with. have have space for that, allow it to be there, and then learn how to work with those emotions in ways that move you forward rather than send you back or cause you to put your head in the sand. um, there's skill sets that allowed people to see possibility and options and choice, to feel empathy, like you were talking about earlier, to connect to a larger vision and retain some of that positive outlook that change is possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, technology to shift, and that's where I started my career, and I've watched it grow leaps and bounds. Starting as a software engineer, and wow. I think of Moore's law, and as he was talking about how fast things are going to double in terms of like innovation in the technology space,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
definitely living that right now for sure.
Well, and that's your first language, Dave. For many
Yes.
of us, I am not a technology person. I'm a people person. And so there's a huge learning curve for me, and I'm trying to keep up, and man, it's hard. I got it, there's so much that's going over my head right now. Um,
It's the same for technology people to learn people skills. It's not easy.
this is why we have to come together.
That's right. It took many classes and workshops to get the people skills. Yes, yeah, I understand. But
Yeah.
as we wrap up, can you offer our listeners, a few takeaways that they can implement? Maybe I want to say immediately to start incorporating generative leadership practices into their leadership style.
Well, so the first one I'm going to say, I am a huge believer in getting support. I mean, one of your tenets of generative leadership is focus on we, and part of that is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's we doing it together, right? And it's enabling, figuring out how to enable people to do what they need to do. And I think support, whether it's a coach, a mentor, an accountability buddy, a peer group, an action learning team in an organization, whatever that support looks like, you need to have support. And so get it. That would be my first, find a way to get some support to show up as the leader who has awareness, intention, practice, and courage. And then the second one I would offer is, big surprise, it goes to inquiry and curiosity. start practicing putting aside the answers you think you have about a situation or a person and start asking questions that you might genuinely want to know the answers to, and then be open to what arises from that.
Well, I am so appreciative of the time that you gave today and just giving so generously, of your time and of yourself and of your knowledge. So thank you so much. Anything you want to plug before I close?
Well, I'll share my website.
There you go.
Gatheringalon.com. I would hope that people might go check it out. And I offer coaching, peer coaching, and various other kinds of engagements. So thank you for that opportunity to plug that. And thanks for having me, Dave. I've enjoyed being here with you. I've enjoyed getting to think about leadership from a different perspective. I mean, you and I come from different realms and different ways of thinking. And I do appreciate seeing how much we are saying the same things in maybe different language, but appreciate that. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Likewise. Hold on for a second. Let me just close. And so, you know what? Thank you for listening to the Not Sure with Dr. Dave podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Audible, and just wherever you get your podcasts. I want you to check out my latest leadership book that Bryn spoke about. It's called Generative Leadership to Thrive. And you could find this book on Amazon, and it comes in all the various flavors that you want. It comes audio, Kindle, print, so you could get the book there. Also on my website is Dr. Dave Duca, and that's DaveDuca.com, and you could also get the electronic version there. So thank you for listening. And just remember that this journey to excellence is ongoing, and every step taken is a step toward a generative leadership, to practicing an abundance mindset, to help to create a thriving generative organization. And look forward to just sharing new knowledge. And with that, just have a great day wherever you are and whatever you're doing.
We all have something to share. No share with Dr. Dave.